So everybody, lead meteorologist John Triquet here for our daily hail forecast on this Friday. And we got a bunch to talk about today. Looks like a pretty active weekend for some severe weather start to today through the weekend. Large hail, tornado risk possible, all hazards pretty much through the weekend as we have a lot of instability because it is hot across a lot of the country. Storm threat will move east tomorrow. Could possibly see some storms along the east coast for your Saturday. And the tropics have really woken up already. We have a couple different areas that we're looking at here and potentially could have our first real hurricane of the season some point next week. So we'll dip our toes into that a little bit later on. So storm reports from yesterday, man, we had quite a bit of wind up here in the northern plains, up across the Billings area and everything. Nothing too crazy in terms of hail, but definitely real gusty up in South Dakota, Wyoming, portions of North Dakota, and all around the Billings, Montana area. A couple other storms scattered about as well. This is pretty common for this time of year. You get some downbursts across the coast, east coast, where you get some sea breeze fronts, and a couple other storms pretty late in the evening moving across northwestern Oklahoma. Thankfully this time it didn't move into the Oklahoma City metro. So what we're looking at right now, pretty quiet across a good chunk of the country. We have a storm system up here in Montana, and we have quite a bit of rain here across the Chicagoland area and extending back west towards Iowa. This disturbance will allow for some storms to form this afternoon, and this spinning mass right up here across central Montana and areas east of Calgary looks like that's your storm system that will also trigger quite a bit of severe weather through this weekend. It's like when you're getting close to July, instead of the big old low pressure systems cutting down across the Four Corners region, it's all the way up here right along the Canadian-U.S. border. So that's what happens. We got the heat dome here, and you have quite a bit of warm temperatures. Kansas City got a nice rain-cooled 76 degrees, but down here across the I-35 corridor where Hail Trace is located at, it is sizzling hot, and it's just going to keep getting hotter, probably getting up over 100 degrees again here across a lot of the southeast and southern and central plains. So future radar for the rest of today, all that rain that we were seeing here across the Great Lakes region, that will continue to move east, and it'll allow for more storms to be triggered back off to the west across Iowa, down south towards Kansas, and continue all the way across the Great Lakes region through the overnight hours. And by the time Saturday rolls around, we may actually even see storms already ongoing going into the northeast. So with that, with all that precipitation expected, how much of that could have really big hail? And the answer is it's going to be pretty limited here to sections, like where the biggest hail could be, sections of Iowa, parts of Nebraska, potentially even over towards portions of Colorado. It really just depends on what ends up forming. There's going to be a lot of instability to work with as well, because it's so hot and there's a lot of humidity in the air. If anything goes up, it's going to go pretty wild here. You can see one of the models for this evening really show a lot of the instability gets eaten up because we got a, looks like a pretty nasty looking bow echo squall line ripping across the Kansas City, Topeka area. And as we extend through the rest of the weekend, we have a fairly weak cold front moving to the south. Could bring some storms across portions of Oklahoma tomorrow, and then everything kind of resets and starts moving back up north by the time we get to Monday morning. So could be some storms across this weekend. And if we zoom in a little more on the future radar for today as well, you have that. This is the SBC slight risk area, and you can tell it's a slight risk because we have fair amount of storms, nothing too wild. Again, that main area kicking across Kansas City, that is not a guarantee by any means. The models like to lock on to certain areas, and sometimes it happens. Other times it'll be like Omaha on Tuesday, where it looks like it was going to happen about 10, 11 o'clock at night, and the storms formed on top of Omaha about 5:30. So, as always, you take this with a grain of salt, right? Basically, it shows there's going to be some storms in the area, could be some storms in Colorado, could be in the Front Range, could even make it all the way to Kansas City. So that forecast max hail size today, due to some of the messy natures of some of the storms. I think tennis ball size hail is the maximum hail size potential. Again, anything isolated this time of year with the amount of available instability will allow for some pretty big hail. So forecast hail map for today. You guys probably kind of figured it out already. It's going to be pretty much centrally located here across pretty much from east of Denver down by Kansas City, especially if there's anything isolated that moves off to the south, or the tail end Charlie with an Eboico. You could really get some pretty big hail with that. Otherwise, a lot more on the smaller hail size with these more garden variety thunderstorms. Low chances for Denver. I think the storm chances will be a lot better a little bit further east, but Denver itself, I think any severe hail will be pretty few and far between. Rapid City, kind of the same deal. Further to the east here, across Omaha, Des Moines, Kansas City, models have been very consistent, showing storms somewhere in this area, so a moderate chance of at least quarter-size hail. I think the up to golf balls, maybe a little larger than that, will be pretty limited here. Only just a couple areas scattered across this region that could see some really big hail, but whether it's Omaha, Des Moines, or Kansas City, I'd say just a moderate chance of at least quarters. And then further down to the south here, we didn't really mention this too much till right now, but it's that time of year where the sea breeze kicks into Florida, fires off some storms, and possibly could drop some quarter-size hail for places like Orlando all the way down to Miami. So few and far between. If you're in Florida, you kind of know how this rolls. It's only a couple storms, but we can't rule that out, especially with how warm it is in the area. So everything moves off to the east on Saturday. We have storms through the afternoon across Pennsylvania, all the way back towards the St. Louis area, even all the way back into areas to the east of Denver, that I-25 corridor. This is that time of year as well where storms very likely form almost every single day off the Front Range. So eventually one of them is going to make some big hail, especially maybe down towards Colorado Springs. We haven't seen anything yet this year. By about 9:30 in the evening, storms will be approaching the I-95 corridor up in the northeast. Hail size is probably not great, but you could see some pretty strong gusty winds with that. And then extending all the way through the overnight hours, storms are going to form across Kansas as well. And that may also reach further south towards Oklahoma. So tomorrow's hail forecast, pretty wide area. However, the maximum hail sizes I think aren't going to be crazy. A lot of different storms, especially in the East Coast. It's really hard to get really big hail. Low chances for Oklahoma City and Kansas City, from Jonesboro, Arkansas to Springfield, Illinois to Louisville to Pittsburgh to Cleveland. I think it's pretty likely there will be storms, and probably a moderate chance of any of those storms making up to quarter-size hail. And then further off to the east here, we could see some hail potentially all the way to pretty much the Hudson River Valley, where eventually storms begin to weaken. You get rid of that sunshine and you get rid of that heating because of the sun, and the storms really die off. The Atlantic is warm in a lot of places, but not so much right off the East Coast here in the Northeast. So that's what we're expecting for your Saturday, and then just kind of zeroing in on the future radar here for specifically the Central Plains. You have storms very likely forming in the afternoon hours across the Denver area. Again, I think they're not going to be strong enough. There isn't enough real strong forcing off the Front Range to allow for really big hail, but there's a potential you get some storms there. And then across portions of Kansas, I think it's more soaking rain, maybe a little bit of relief from the heat as you get quite a bit of storm activity through the overnight hours. And because of the amount of storm activity, it's really going to limit the ability for these individual updrafts to allow for really big hail, and that's why we're only saying quarter to $half size hail possible. Shifting gears here into the tropics, speaking of the warm temperatures, down here in the Gulf and the Caribbean and portions of the Atlantic, there is no shortage of nice warm bath water to work with here, and you probably have been seeing it all over the place. The alarm bells have been ringing for a crazy hurricane season. We are just now about to enter July, and it looks like things are going to turn on pretty quickly. I know, granted, hurricane season starts June 1st, but really for the United States, the part of hurricane season in the United States really has to be concerned usually is about mid-August. I think this year it's going to be starting some point next week. So we have very warm temperatures, mid to upper 80s across the Atlantic, and that is allowing for two areas of interest that we're looking at here. This is Invest 94L. Pretty weak right now, getting close to the Yucatan Peninsula. Still very likely form into like a weak tropical depression as it moves over the Yucatan. We'll have to watch it as it moves into the Gulf, though, especially if it decides to go this way as opposed to this way. And then off to the west, this is probably the bigger one. If you follow any kind of tropical activity on social media, this is probably the one that you've been seeing here. this will very likely become the next tropical storm, possibly our first real hurricane of the year, and move east into the Caribbean through this week. And we'll have to keep very close eyes on this thing because it could potentially threaten the United States the week after the 4th of July. So that's all I got for you guys today. Follow us on our social media platforms on X, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, all at Hailtrace. Easy to find us. Give us a call at 855-334-4245. Email us at info@hailtrace.com or visit us at our website. You won't see me on Monday. Taylor will be her first day doing the forecast on Monday. So come in and check it out, and welcome her to doing these videos and seeing her face pretty much every single day. So we'll see you there on Monday.